Hey there. So, I'm currently going through a major lifestyle change. I'm overhauling habits that have been ingrained in my life for as long as I can remember. Our habits become our regard for normalcy through domestication and our upbringing, but also through agreements that we think we have no choice or no influence over. Unknowingly, we are all living in ways that we may or may not have ever considered. I want to share my experiences with you and why I'm deciding to overhaul some of the habits I have in my life. The way that we eat is completely cultural. Our typical American diet starts out with coffee and maybe some sugary cereal for breakfast. And for lunch, maybe we'll have a turkey and cheese sandwich with some chips and maybe a soda on the side. Um, Maybe we'll have a snack with a cheese stick and an apple later on. And by dinner time, we want something kind of hearty because none of those nutrients have filled us up. And so we'll end up having some kind of pasta with meat and cheese on it, maybe a side salad. But by the late evening, we are then hungry for ice cream or chocolate or something. And this kind of diet over time has really negative effects on our lifestyle. Not only is it super heavy on animal products, but it also contains a really high amount of fat and sugar and salt, and it's really, really acidic for our bodies. So, what happens over a long period of time with eating foods that are super acidic is that it can actually cause damage to the way that our bodies function. Um, when we eat properly, our bodies have every nutrient that they need to function optimally. If we get some kind of illness inside of our body, it has the immunities to be able to fight that off. Unfortunately, most of the foods that we're eating, like processed foods and dairy products and cheeses, well, that's a dairy product, eggs and meat, they're all acidic. They are less than 7 on the pH scale, and most of the foods that our typical American diet is lacking are the plant-based foods like fruits, vegetables, leafy greens, but most of those are alkaline. Those are a little bit more than 7 on the pH scale. Optimally, our body thrives at about a 7.3, 7.4 on the pH scale. The thing is, our regular diets aren't getting our bodies to that pH level. And over time, that causes some serious damage to our bodies where we're getting things like diabetes and heart disease and cancer. The numbers are increasing so much, and on a smaller scale, if you can put suffering to a smaller scale, there's fatigue, there's headaches, there's upset stomachs, depression, anxiety. All of these things can be healed through our diet. If we would just provide ourselves with the nutrients that we would need to thrive, then our body could do what it needs to do to heal itself when things happen.
People killing, people dying, children hurt and you hear them crying.
Okay, so here's the thing. Knowing what we know about how we don't need animal products to function optimally, it seems a little absurd to me that we are going to such great lengths to kill animals and to harvest them for their flesh. We're using their skin, their fur, their tusks, their horns, and we're using the food that they create for their babies, like the milk, for us. We don't need it. It's just a little absurd. So, for one thing, with milk, this was sort of new for me. Cows produce milk for baby calves. Duh. A cow can't produce milk unless it's either pregnant or it just had a baby. But if the calf was to get that milk, then the dairy industry wouldn't be able to use that milk to sell it to humans like us in the store. And so what ends up happening is the baby calves are torn away from their moms, sometimes minutes or sometimes days after their birth, and it's tragic. The mom and the baby are literally crying and mooing and clearly distraught from this separation. I mean, it's to see a cow and a calf become separated, clearly against their will, tugs at something deep inside of a person. There's so many injustices in our world that we've already taken a stand for, yet we have complete disregard for the sanctity of a maternal-child relationship in sentient beings. Cows are living. We are living. We have babies just like they do. They're mammals. Could you ever imagine taking a baby out of a human mother's arms moments after birth? She would fight you. She'd scream, she'd holler, she'd be so upset, and the baby and the mom would suffer from that. Their relationship wouldn't be able to form. That would hurt so bad in their hearts, and that's what we're doing to every single mother cow and baby calf just so that we can drink milk and eat cheese. That has to go through your brain when this food is brought in front of you. It's so hidden from us all, yet we're eating it on a daily basis. We have to do something about this. It's not cool, man. Not cool. So I talked a little bit about dairy and milk and cheese and how we get that. But now I'm going to talk about how we get our meat. I think you all know that when we eat meat, an animal has to die. But the way in which it dies in our country regularly is atrocious. These animals are living in confined conditions without room to frolic around or to eat what they please or to have relationships with other animals of their kind. They're crowded in cages. Sometimes they are branded. Ouch. Sometimes their ears are clipped. Ouch. Sometimes their tails are cut off. What the heck? So that they won't eat each other's tails, because cannibalism happens with pigs and with chickens. They cut their beaks off because they're so angry that they're all confined in there. Yet we think it's okay that if we're raising these animals, we'll just mutilate them a little bit so that they won't hurt each other, so that we can still sell them to people. It isn't right. When it comes time for them to die so that we can eat them, their throats are slit, their esophaguses are ripped out, blood goes into their lungs, they're drowning on their own blood, they're suffering, dying slowly, painfully, and a machine picks them up by their back leg, carries them down this conveyor belt, and puts them in scalding water. Some of them are still flailing and suffering and dying, and we put them in scalding water so that their fur is burnt off, and then we skin them. And all the while, these animals are just slowly dying so that we can eat them. It doesn't make any sense. There's no way that I myself could ever do that to an animal. And if I can't do that to an animal, why in the world would I have somebody else do that for me just so that I can eat the meat? Even if I saw a dead animal just laying on the side of the road, you've all seen dead cats, and it's tragic. You're like, oh my God, that cat. That's what we do to animals on purpose every day so that we can eat them. A cat, a dog, a cow, a pig, a chicken, a sheep, they're no different from each other. They're all living sentient beings with feelings and emotions, and the fact that we're killing them for food when we don't need to, when that's not even good for our bodies, it doesn't make any sense. If we can't do the things to these animals that are happening on our own, then we shouldn't be contributing to a system that is having so many injustices towards animals on a regular basis. We need to rethink our habits. We need to rethink our habits. So we've talked a little bit about nutrition, and we've talked a little bit about how the products are actually brought to us. But I want to talk to you now about the environment. The animals that we end up killing or using their products, like milk, those animals eat a lot of grain and a lot of grass, and we don't have enough land in our country to feed all of the animals that we are going to be consuming. Many of these factory farm animals eat soybeans because it's cheaper than putting them out in the fields to eat grass. But the thing is, they're not growing many soybeans in America. We are having other countries grow our soybeans for our animals for us. We keep hearing about how we're chopping down the rainforest, and we're like, why are we chopping down the rainforest? Well, we're doing that so that we can feed the factory farm animals so that we can eat them. Not only is this not a good use of our land resources for us, it's not good for the people in the other countries too. There's so much poverty all over the world, and there are so many hungry people all over the world. And maybe if they are growing grains in other countries for us, maybe we should let them grow those grains for themselves so that they can then eat those plants and not go hungry. Not only are these products not a good use of our land and of our money and for our nutrition, most of these crops are GMO crops. The soybeans and the corns that they're growing for these animals have been genetically modified so that they are resistant to certain pests and certain diseases. While that all sounds fine and dandy, what we don't realize is that those animals that are eating those GMO crops are making up their bodies full of GMO ingredients. Because you are what you eat. Your cells regenerate from what you put into them, and that's all that they're putting into their cow bodies, because that's all that they can do. They don't have a choice in the matter like we do. But we are then eating the flesh of those cows and other animals that have GMO products in them. So even if we're trying really hard to avoid GMOs and processed foods in the stores, if you're eating meat, there's a really good chance that you're putting those GMOs in your body. And milk with the hormones and everything is just crazy. We fill these animals up with all sorts of chemicals and toxins just so that they can sort of be okay to eat, and then we eat them. And it just doesn't make sense. The animals are getting their nutrition from the plants, and then we're eating the animals. We're kind of going through a middleman when we could just simply be going directly to the source and eating the plants themselves, which are super rich in antioxidants and vitamins and minerals and proteins and carbohydrates and fats and sugars, and they've got everything we need. Why are we eating animals? It doesn't make any sense. Beyond all this, we have to think about the toxic waste that is coming from these animals eating all day long. They are pooping a lot. All this poop piles up and they don't have anything to do with it. And what ends up happening is it starts piling up and leaching into streams and lakes, and it's killed so many ecosystems of plants and animals and fish and algae and bacteria and things in communities. And later on, it ends up contaminating our very own water supply. So we are drinking contaminated water because we're choosing to eat meat through this process, and dairy and eggs, and we're all contributing to it, but we don't realize it. The gases that are coming off of these animals from their poop and from them farting, I know it sounds a little silly, but the methane that they produce is going up into our ozone layer and it's destroying it. We've all heard about carbon dioxide in our cars and how much we're driving and how we can reduce the greenhouse gases that we're producing through stopping driving so much and various things like that. But what they don't tell you is that way more greenhouse gases are going into the air from our factory farming procedures than all the cars and trucks and planes and everything combined. Why are we continuing to close our eyes to the realities of the habits that we have? If this is such a major contributor to greenhouse gases and climate change, why are we not doing something about it? Why are we not doing something about it?
When you practice what you preach and what you turn the other cheek.
Guess what? We can do something. We can do something about our terrible health and our sad emotions. We can do something about the injustices being done to animals. We can do something to end world hunger. And we can do something about global warming. It's easy to think that we don't make a difference. That's the story that we're often told. We continue to live the lives that we've always lived because we haven't stopped to question how our daily actions influence everything else around us. We can make a difference in all of these interconnected pieces of our reality. I urge you to find out the truth about these topics. I urge you to consider your current habits and to think about the influence you're having on our world. Just because we've been domesticated to think and to act in certain ways doesn't mean we can't make more informed decisions and think and act for ourselves upon getting a more broad picture of the situation at hand. Be a leader, be an advocate for what you think is right, and please use your resources and our resources in ways that align with your moral code. Thanks, guys.